Imagine you are cleaning your room, but just as you pick up another candy wrapper off the floor with a sigh, your brain starts slowly playing a song that you heard earlier that day. Before you know it, the song is blasting in your head, and you can't seem to make it stop replaying the same part of the song over and over again. This experience is caused by an earworm, and it's notorious for hijacking your mind and repeating snippets of songs uncontrollably from a couple minutes to even hours at a time. But don't worry, earworms aren't actually evil worms that crawl into your ears and control your mind. They are just pieces of music that are catchy enough for your brain to put on repeat. But why do we get earworms? And how do they get stuck in your head in the first place? Well, the answer lies in our brain's unusual wiring and memory storage. Welcome to the Thought Waterfall Podcast. I'm your host, Sharvi, and let's jump right into our episode today. Let's go back to what an earworm really is. Like I said before, an earworm isn't actually a worm. It's just a funny word for when a fragment of a catchy song repeatedly plays in your brain, even after you physically stop playing actual music. Earworms are sometimes called stuck song syndrome or even brainworms, and are extremely common in most people. Additionally, earworms are a type of involuntary musical imagery, meaning that they spontaneously happen and are characterized for being unwanted or disturbing in some cases. But what triggers earworms to sneak into your head? Well, when you hear a piece of music, you might associate it with a memory you have. For example, if you hear a song on the radio that you remember hearing at an amusement park you went to in the summer, the song will most likely remind you of those memories of the amusement park. This makes it easier for the song to get stuck in your head since you have a personal connection with it. Similarly, if a song brings up some kind of emotional change in your mood because the song reminds you of something special, you might keep replaying that song in order to relive the feelings that the song has brought you in the past. Even the type of music may trigger you to remember it more. If a song is repetitive or has certain characteristics, like catchy lyrics or unexpected pauses that are simple to hum or sing along to, it will naturally be easier to remember and more likely to stick in your brain. To further understand how earworms get into our minds, let's take a quick trip into our brain. Though scientists haven't fully figured out what exactly happens in your brain when we get earworms, here's what we know so far. The auditory cortex is the part of our brains that processes sounds from our environment and stores musical memories. Now here's where it gets interesting. Studies have shown that the auditory cortex is active when you are simply imagining music, even though there might not be anything making sound around you. In other words, the auditory cortex goes into action when earworms happen, since earworms are when you repeatedly imagine or play music in your head. However, there might be another answer to our question. Earworms are known to occur when you are doing tasks that don't require as much attention, like showering or doing chores. As a result, our attention networks aren't as engaged, and our brain pulls out pieces of information from memory to try to entertain these networks. This content can sometimes end up being songs or other pieces of music that you've listened to in the past, ultimately causing earworms. But are earworms bad for you, knowing that they can be really annoying and hard to stop? Not necessarily, since earworms take place when your mind is wandering or when doing tasks requiring little attention. Earworms may actually spark some creativity and give your brain a rest from the activities you might have done during the day. On the other hand, if an earworm lasts for over 24 hours, it might be a sign of an underlying neurological condition. If this experience occurs with earworms lasting over a few days, consider checking with a professional for help. That brings us to our last question. How do we get rid of earworms? Several solutions with mixed reviews have been brought up over the years by many people. For example, some state that challenging and purposely trying to stop the earworm just makes it worse, and to instead accept and let it stop by itself. Others say that distracting yourself by engaging in other tasks is the way to go, and simply to not focus on whatever song the earworm is playing. Even playing actual music that is different from the earworm song or chewing gum may make a difference in successfully getting rid of the earworm. This just goes to show how mysterious the brain really is, and how it can trigger something so random like an earworm to happen so often in our daily lives. Earworms are just another example of how powerful our brains can be, and the significant impact the brain has on us every day. Well, that's it for this episode. To recap, earworms aren't actually real worms that crawl into your ear, they're just pieces of music that repeat in your mind. They can be triggered by emotions or memories, as well as catchy tunes that stick and repeat in your head. The part of your brain that is active when earworms happen is called the auditory cortex. And earworms can happen in order to engage your attention networks when you are doing tasks requiring less focus. Earworms are harmless in most cases, and can actually be beneficial in terms of creativity and positive moods. However, if it lasts more than a day, consider checking with a medical professional. Finally, some ways to get rid of those annoying earworms include not focusing on the earworm, distracting yourself, or chewing gum. And that brings us to the end of our podcast today. Once again, I'm your host Jarvie, and thank you so much for listening to the Thought Waterfall Podcast. I hope you learned something new, and remember, you are truly capable of unlocking your potential, one thought at a time.